There's something almost hypnotic about watching frustration build slowly, not in big dramatic bursts, but in small, quiet moments that stack on top of each other until the room feels heavier than it did just a few minutes earlier. And that feeling is exactly what keeps pulling me back to All in the Family, especially in those episodes where nothing huge happens on the surface, and yet everything underneath starts to shift inch by inch, until you realize you're not really watching a comedy in the traditional sense. You're watching pressure build inside a family that doesn't quite know how to release it. I keep thinking about a particular kind of situation the show returns to again and again, but this time it centers around money, not in a flashy or exaggerated way, but in that very grounded, very real sense of a working-class household trying to stretch what they have, trying to make it last, trying to hold on to a sense of control in a world that doesn't always feel stable. And it begins, as it so often does, in that living room with Archie settling into his chair, already carrying the weight of the day with him, even before anyone says a word. He's tired, but it's not just physical. It's the kind of tired that comes from feeling like you're constantly pushing against something, like the world is changing faster than you can keep up with, like the rules you understood yesterday don't quite apply today. And you can sense that before the conversation even starts, in the way he sits, in the way he reacts to small things, in the way his patience feels just a little thinner than usual. Moves around the room gently, quietly, trying to keep everything balanced, trying to keep things comfortable, because she can feel that tension too, even if she doesn't always name it. And she responds the way she always does, with kindness, with small gestures, with an instinct to smooth things over before they turn into something bigger. And then Mike enters the conversation, not aggressively, not looking for a fight, but carrying his own perspective, his own ideas about how things should be, about fairness, about opportunity, about the way money and work and effort are connected. And he brings that into the room almost casually, almost as if it's just another topic, but you can feel the shift immediately. Because for Archie, money isn't just money, it's identity, it's effort, it's pride. It's the proof that he's doing his job, that he's providing, that he's holding things together. And when Mike starts talking about systems or fairness or the way things could be different, it doesn't land as a neutral idea, it lands as a challenge. At first, it's subtle, a small disagreement, a difference in tone, maybe a slightly sharper response than usual. And if you're not paying attention, you might miss it. You might think it's just another conversation, just another exchange. But then it happens again, another comment, another reaction, another moment where the tension rises just a little higher. And you start to feel that slow build, that layering of frustration that doesn't explode right away. It just sits there, growing. Gloria notices it, of course she does. She's always aware of the emotional temperature in the room, and she tries to keep things balanced, to keep the conversation from tipping too far in one direction. But she's also part of it. She has her own feelings, her own reactions, and sometimes her attempts to help only add another layer to the tension. And what's fascinating is how the show lets this unfold without rushing, without forcing a big moment too early. It trusts the audience to sit with that slow build, to feel it, to recognize it. because it's something most people have experienced in their own lives. That feeling of a conversation turning, almost without anyone noticing exactly when it happened. Archie starts to repeat himself a little more, his points becoming firmer, less flexible, not because he's trying to dominate the conversation, but because he feels like he has to defend something, something that matters to him, something that feels like it's being questioned. Mike responds in kind, not backing down, not letting things go, because for him, letting it go would mean accepting something he doesn't agree with, something he believes needs to be challenged. And so the conversation keeps moving back and forth, each response carrying a little more weight than the last. It tries to redirect, to soften, to bring in something lighter, something that might ease the tension. And sometimes it works for a moment. Sometimes the room feels like it might settle, like the frustration might dissolve. But then something pulls it back. Another comment, another reaction, and you realize that the tension isn't going anywhere. It's just waiting, building, becoming more present with each passing minute. This is where the show becomes something really special, because it replaces the traditional idea of punchlines with something much more subtle, much more real. The humor comes from recognition, from the way these characters behave, from the way they misunderstand each other, from the way they talk past each other while thinking they're making perfect sense. You might laugh at Archie's stubbornness, at the way he insists on his perspective even when it's being challenged from multiple directions. But that laughter isn't comfortable. It's mixed with something else, something that makes you aware of the tension rather than forgetting it. And that's part of what made the show so groundbreaking in its time. It didn't try to hide the discomfort. It didn't try to smooth everything out for the sake of easy entertainment. It leaned into it. It made it part of the experience. In the context of 1970s America, that was a big shift, because television had often avoided these kinds of conversations, or handled them in ways that felt more distant, less personal. But here, everything is personal, everything is close. Everything happens in that living room where there's no escape from the conversation once it starts. And the living room itself plays such a crucial role in this, because it's not just a setting, it's a container. It holds the characters together. It forces them to engage. It removes the possibility of walking away, at least not easily. And that creates a kind of intensity that you don't get in shows that move from place to place. As the frustration continues to build, you start to see how each character processes it differently. Archie becomes more defensive, more insistent, his voice rising not just in volume but in urgency, as if he needs to be heard more clearly, more forcefully. Mike becomes more direct, less willing to soften his points, because he feels like the conversation matters, like it has real implications, and that adds another layer of intensity. Gloria becomes more emotional, more reactive, because she's caught in the middle, because she cares about both sides, because she wants something better than this constant tension, and that desire makes her responses more charged. And quietly, consistently, continues to offer something else, something gentler, something that doesn't try to win the argument but tries to preserve the connection between the people having it. But even her kindness can't stop the frustration from building. because the conversation has reached a point where it's not just about the topic anymore. It's about everything underneath it, about identity, about respect, about feeling heard or not heard. The voices don't explode all at once. They rise gradually, overlapping, interrupting, creating that familiar chaos of a family argument where everyone is speaking, and no one is really listening in the way they need to be. And yet, somehow, it's still funny, not in a light, easy way, but in a way that makes you recognize the absurdity of it. The way people can get so caught up in their own perspective that they lose sight of the person in front of them. The show uses that humor carefully, not to undercut the tension, but to highlight it, to make it more visible, to make it more relatable. And that's why it works. That's why it still feels relevant. Because the issues might shift, the specific topics might change, but the structure of the conversation, the way frustration builds, the way people talk past each other, the way emotions rise without resolution, that hasn't really changed. As the episode moves toward its end, there's no big resolution, no moment where everything clicks into place. Instead, there's a gradual release of energy. The conversation slows, the voices lower, not because anything has been solved, but because people reach their limit. They've said what they can say, they've pushed as far as they can push, and the frustration, instead of exploding, just settles into the room, becoming part of the atmosphere rather than something that needs to be resolved. And that's such an honest ending because it reflects something real, something about how these conversations actually work, how they don't always lead to understanding, how they often just reveal the gaps that exist. Personally, I find that kind of storytelling incredibly compelling, even if it's a little uncomfortable because it feels true. It feels like something I've seen, something I've experienced, that slow build of frustration that doesn't have a clear release. And I think that's why All in the Family still resonates, because it doesn't pretend that everything can be fixed in a single conversation. It doesn't offer easy answers. It just shows you what it looks like when people try to understand each other and fall short. There's something almost quiet about the final moments, the way the characters return to their routines, the way the room settles, the way the tension lingers just beneath the surface, and you realize that nothing has really been resolved, but something has been revealed. And maybe that's enough, maybe that's the point, that the conversation itself, with all its frustration, all its discomfort, all its small, building moments, is the story. So when you think about it later, when you replay those moments in your mind, it's not the jokes that stand out, it's the feeling, that slow, steady rise of tension, that sense of something unresolved, something still hanging in the air. And in a strange way, that's what makes it linger, what makes it stay with you, because it feels unfinished, because it invites you to keep thinking about it, to keep turning it over, to see it from different angles. And maybe that's why it works so well as a long conversation, not just within the show, but between the show and the audience, because it doesn't end when the episode ends. It just shifts. It continues in your own thoughts, your own reflections. And that's where it becomes something more than just a sitcom, something that feels closer to real life, closer to the way people actually experience these moments, with all their complexity, all their frustration, all their unresolved energy.